Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Cimmerian September, Michael K. Vaughan's great yearly event where we indulge ourselves in Robert E. Howard and his signature character, Conan the Barbarian, but also, especially this year, anything else that he wrote, all the other stuff that he wrote. And I have not devoted myself to Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian, and I have not devoted myself to any of other Robert E. Howard's creations for Cimmerian September 2025. Instead, I've devoted myself to a pile of old black and white Savage Sword of Conan magazines from 40 years ago. I found a pile of them at the Brattle, and there was one for every day of the month, so I thought, why don't I do that this month and see what I find? And I have found some interesting things. Also, it helps when you're looking at these pastiches to think about what constitutes quintessential Conan. Right? Because that's the yardstick by which we measure pastiches of any kind. We tend not to measure them by the quality of their own writing. Instead, we tend to measure them by their fidelity to the original, which can be different for each reader. So it strikes me as interesting. That's an interesting aspect of all this. And I am up to Savage Sword of Conan number 120 with a terrific cover. This is a cover by Bob Larkin, whose previous cover I think I did not particularly like, and who also I think started us off at the beginning of September with a cover. But that's terrific. A gladiatorial combat scene from that angle is really good. And there is a gladiatorial, it does reflect something in the story. The story is called Star of Thamazhu. And it starts with Conan in a mine. He is working in a mine. And the story is by Larry Yakata, and the artwork is by Pablo Marcos. I'm mostly familiar with Pablo Marcos as an inker, and wasn't sure that I would like him as an artist, but I did kind of end up liking him as an artist. And we have just Conan working in a mine with a whole bunch of other guys. He's not a slave. He is working voluntarily. He's being paid. Don't know why. It doesn't strike me as anything that Conan would ever do to work in a mine, even for money, even for steady money. But there are all sorts of other workers in the mine, and one of them, it also doesn't seem realistic in the Hyborian Age. Economically speaking, from the economics of the Hyborian Age, surely the owner of this mine would be cheaper to use slaves than to pay men who could leave at any time or who could unionize or whatnot. But anyway, there are all sorts of people in this mine. Conan seems to be getting along fine with most of them, but there is one poor, sorry wretch. Let me get you a picture of him. Yeah, there's one poor, hunchback, sorry wretch. He manages to make his way in the mine, and he has an amulet, a bauble of his own. These men are not slaves, so they have possessions of their own. And the other men in the mine mercilessly pick on this guy, and they take his bauble from him, and they accuse Conan of stealing it. And at first, this poor guy, what's his name? Gamu, Ghamu. He at first accuses Conan, but Conan didn't do it, and Conan doesn't appreciate the way the other men are mocking that setup. He doesn't like it at all. He starts to fight them with his bare fist, but still, he's Conan, so that you're doing a serious amount of damage. And the mine overseer says, well, I can't have you doing this damage. You do a lot more work than any of these other men, but not all of them put together, so you have to go. You're fired. Pays Conan his wages, and off Conan goes. And little does he suspect that he is going to be followed. He goes to a city called Kadath, which is a disreputable hellhole, and in this disreputable hellhole, he sees that men are involved in gladiatorial combat. Conan doesn't have any money except for what he got from the mines, but he is pretty good at betting on other men in combat, and he bets on the winner and is correct, so he has a large amount of money, for which he is jumped. But if Conan was not an easy target with just his fists and feet, he's an impossible target with a sword in a dark alley. But he gets some help. At the last minute, he gets some help. Gamu has followed him from the mines. He's followed him and said, please forgive me and let me travel with you as your companion. And Conan says, the only traveling companion I wish is this sword. Seek your friendship elsewhere and don't meddle in my affairs. A lone wastrel has no time to gather burrs on his heels. It's kind of pitiful. Conan goes about his task of making merry, but there is a secret society here. He's actually been warned about this by a wizard on the way, and the one of the members of that society tries to accost him in bed. That doesn't work, and he sees other members of that society chasing a beautiful young woman who's crying for help. And Conan, one of them says, the one that's closest to her, says that unless you've got wings, you can't stop me. And Conan says, my sword is my wings, and impales the guy. And right as he does that, Gamu shows up again. He is still following Conan. Conan at one point seems ready to kill him, and the young woman has to intervene. She is looking for something. It's a long and unnecessarily convoluted story, but they go to this mystic temple to find her thingamajig, to find the MacGuffin. And when they're there, she is abducted by the overlord of this keep, who wants her to dance for him. Again, this is much like the made him into an ox in the last issue. I'm pretty sure that the dance for him is heavily euphemistic. They are separated, and Conan is faced with someone named Vaginu, who is the guardian of the overlord of this keep, who is Manu Kalim. He is the master of this keep, and Veniju is not human, and nothing is ever made of that. Nothing is ever there's no mention made of it at all. He has mystical powers. He can confuse Conan's senses. But when he talks about himself, when he talks about fighting, they're fighting each other. Conan and this beast creature are fighting each other. And the beast creature says, Manu Kalim and his gracious forefathers taught me well. As a child, I learned my grisly trade by throttling infants. As a boy, I strangled young girls. I grew into manhood, ripping the heads off grown men and sucking them white and dry of blood. And now, between these fingers, I will grasp yours slowly, and watch your eyes burst red from their sockets. So this creature has lived through many lifetimes? Why does it refer to its boyhood? How was it killing young boys and young girls when it was a tiny whatever the young of this species is? How is it not... That's a story. That's not something you just throw in. And we're not done. We're not done with that at all, because then eventually we get to his master, who is also not human. Some sort of reptiloid of some kind or other. We get a rather overlong series of... This is a bloated story. This could have been 8 pages. But he eventually ends up wanting to ravish this woman when suddenly he's called out, not by Conan, but by Gamu, who is up on this upper balcony. And the creature warps reality to bring him down to the ground, to crash him to the ground, and then warps his biology by grotesquely bloating his face, filling it with fluid, so that he's begging for mercy. And because this creature is so preoccupied with Gamu, Conan has a chance to kill him. To just hurl his sword again from behind and spear him in the back. And goes up to the obviously dying Gamu to comfort him. Tells him, you fool, I told you to wait outside. And Gamu says, I wanted to help. I was some help, was I not? For my whole life, people shunned their eyes, laughed at me. I wanted to be like you, to be with you. After what you did for me in those mines, for your kindness, I wanted to be like you. And then he dies. And I wish I could say otherwise, but he dies and Conan makes no more of it. He thinks no more of it. He just moves on. He beds the woman. He laughs as he is riding away with the gem. Doesn't seem to think about it at all. When to me, it was by far the most moving part of the story, was this Gamu character and how, I mean, what's his story? What's that feral werewolf creature's story? What's this snake guy's story? We don't get any of it, unless it's all a sequel to an earlier Savage Sword story that I don't remember. We don't get any of that. Which I know that it's classic Conan. In some classic Conan stories, the major elements of the story are not explained. They are never explained. We never get backstory about them. Still, it seemed like we could have got a little more than what we did get if there hadn't been quite so many bloated pages. And then the backup story was once again a Cull story by Chuck Dixon with art by Jeff Isherwood. Once again, Jeff Isherwood went on. He's gone on to become a very prominent comic book artist. And I don't know enough about him. I don't know enough about his... I didn't look it up after last time. I don't know enough about his career to know how much work he'd done for mainstream Marvel or DC before now. But now I am overwhelmingly curious to know if these black and white Cull stories by Jeff Isherwood, I mean, that's no small thing. Are these black and white Cull stories by Jeff Isherwood in the Marvel Comics Cull Omnibus volume? I don't recall anyone ever mentioning that, but are they there? I'd love to know. It wouldn't convince me to get that volume, especially since I'm sure that the first printing of that Marvel Cull Omnibus is enormously expensive. I'm sure that it's collectible. I should ask Michael K. Vaughan. I'm sure he has the original printing, and he would know in a heartbeat. I don't know that those black and white adventures of Cull have ever been collected. But anyway, that was Savage Sword of Conan for this time around for Cimmerian September. Pretty interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a story that was only drawn by Pablo Marcos and not just inked by him. And it had a lot of moving parts. It had a lot of swordplay and mystical creatures and whatnot. It just... It would be one thing if Conan rode off laughing and happy about his treasures. If he had just faced mystical creatures, a werewolf creature, a snake creature, that would be one thing. That it has a template in Conan stories, but to not even seem to much care about this poor deformed guy that follows him and tries to help him, that, I don't know. If that is true to Conan's character, then this is another example of me not really wanting to be reminded what Conan's character is like and its unsavory elements. But anyway, it was really, really enjoyable, so we will move on next time. I will see you then. Thank you.